And when Bill first saw the sculpt of the bust, he said, dude, like this guy didn't look anything like me when he was alive. and I said, yeah, but that's the idea. But I remember, he was intimidated in the third screen test when he had the full prosthetics and the full costume, and the moment when Bill completely disappeared and this darkness that he was able to conjure, that darkness took over.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a young woman is preyed upon as the object of a terrifying creature's desires in director Robert Eggers' period horror, Nosferatu. A remake of the 1922 classic, the film follows Ellen and Thomas Hutter, a young couple in 1860s Germany who contend with Ellen's continuing nightmares of a ghoulish being. As Ellen is haunted by these dreams, Thomas sets out to Romania on business with a mysterious client, the enigmatic Count Orlok. In addition to Nosferatu, Eggers' other directorial credits include the feature films The Witch, The Lighthouse, and The Northman. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Eggers spoke with director Chris Columbus about filming Nosferatu. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. I'll bet you never thought you'd see the two of us together. We'll get into that in a minute. It seems like you guys enjoyed the movie. That's great. It's interesting because being involved with this movie, being there every day, it's difficult to come up with questions because I know all the answers, obviously. So I had to put myself in your position to try to come up with interesting questions. So if I disappoint, please shout out and tell me to ask something else. But anyway, I want to start with the journey to get this film made. So this, between the two of us, was officially like a 10-year process from studio to studio. But you've been living with Nosferatu for a long time, ever since you were 9 years old. And in a sense, it's your most personal film. Can you tell us about the origins and how this all began?
Yeah, I mean, the personal film thing, it's kind of interesting because I've been doing it for so long. It kind of did have the same kind of non-jaded energy of a first feature. I mean, I've only made 4 movies, so I guess I'm not that far away from that. But yeah, I mean, basically when I was 9 years old, I saw the Murnau film for the first time. I was already really into Dracula and vampires, but Max Schreck's performance is so iconic. The makeup that he designed himself, the haunting atmosphere, and the thing that kind of stayed with me through adulthood was also that it's kind of my favorite adaptation of the Stoker story because it's just so simple. He distills it to a simple fairy tale. And basically also when I was 17, I directed a play with my friend Ashley Kelly Tata, who's now a theater director. It was like just a small high school thing, and then an artistic director of a local theater saw that and asked us to do a more professional version of it at his theater, and that changed my life because it cemented the fact that I wanted to be a director. And ever since then, Nosferatu is a big part of, who I am as someone who's trying to make creative work.
And there's pictures online of this production, right?
Yeah. If you can, I'm sure it's on Reddit, I think.
But you played Nosferatu, or you played
embarrassingly, yes.
Okay, well, there's no Super 8 films or anything.
Not that will come to surface, I hope.
I sense that you're a very loyal director in terms of your crews. You work with the same collaborators all the time. I want to talk about some of those collaborators because I think they're some of the best craftspeople in the business. Let's start with Jaron, your cinematographer. You worked with Jaron on all of your films. And what is it about your collaboration I mean, I can talk about what's different about your collaboration than most filmmakers I've worked with, but I'd like to hear your side of it.
Well, I think different directors have different kinds of superpowers, like things that they're particularly good at. And, I spent my 20s and early 30s working in the art department or in wardrobe. So that is something that I feel super comfortable with. And I also went to drama school. The only thing I have any training in is acting. And so, my first short I shot myself and it looks like crap as a result. And, and Jaren is, kind of, my big partner, my brother from another mother,
Right.
we're very, very collaborative, and he's taught me a lot about, the technique of cinematography over the years. But basically, for this film, we moved to Prague early, and came up with how we were going to shoot it in my kitchen. And we work with a storyboard artist, but we storyboard the whole thing. And we really stick to the storyboards unless there's a serious problem. And we had 2 weeks of rehearsal where we're working with the actors to learn the blocking that we've already devised before they came there. With some of the much longer dialogue scenes, we figure out the shots with the actors, but it is very much a dance with the camera. And of course we're not there. There's plenty of people working who do these kinds of one-ers, but it's something that for me personally, as an audience member, not with my films, but other films like this, I get just more engaged and more absorbed into the world, when you're not like, unconsciously, semi-consciously aware, of the edits. And it's also striving for a kind of simplicity and elegance, even though making it is not simple or elegant. But also I love it because when you're on set, Aaron Taylor Johnson's relying on Emma Corrin, who's relying on Willem Dafoe, who's relying on Ralph Ineson, who's relying on the camera operator and the focus puller and the dolly pusher and the carpenters who have to move the wall out of the way while the camera's going through and put it back in the middle of the shot. That makes everybody on set very engaged, and everybody feels incredibly collaborative because they really feel that they're making the shot, making the scene as it's happening.
So I was going to ask you this later, many directors, when they're working, I'm sure there's some out here who you bring your actors, you rehearse with your actors, then you bring them to the set. And before any camera work or storyboards are even done, some directors don't use storyboards for specific dramatic scenes. They come in and they block the scene with the actors, and the actors have a tremendous amount of, they're vocal about where they want to be in the scene. It doesn't feel right if I move here. If you're storyboarding the scenes and you're extremely specific about where those actors have to stand, has it ever, now I can only speak about Nosferatu because I saw what happened every day and it was working beautifully, but has it ever been an issue with an actor who doesn't really sort of vibe with the program a little bit, and is it difficult for an actor to get into a situation where they have to be in a specific place, in a specific scene, if it doesn't feel right for them?
We try to find a way for it to work within the framework, and sometimes things need to change a little bit for sure. But they try. You got the and I think some of Aaron was very intimidated about working this way, but in the end became like the biggest cheerleader about the process. So I think it's just kind of and also these, for the most part, my cast was like young, really hungry actors who really just wanted to like sink their teeth into it and do whatever it took, and that was amazing. And also, they had Ralph Ineson and also Willem Dafoe, who've worked with me before. And when Willem Dafoe is kind of, doing it, not complaining, excited, like in there, they want to do the same.
But was he like that on the first film?
He did it. But he was not always happy about it.
Right.
But, I remember after a couple of weeks, he was complaining about some direction, and Jaren wanted to give an extra note, and he was like, look, you guys know I'm going to do exactly whatever the you tell me to do, but just let me have my peace now. And now he's the biggest cheerleader.
But it works. Obviously, when you see the film, it works, and you're not aware of that at all. Let's talk about Craig Lathrop, the production designer. I think the production design on this film is spectacular and beautiful. And what is it about Craig that makes you want to work with him again and again? I mean, after we finished Nosferatu, I wanted to hire Craig, and he wasn't available. I think he's that great.
Well, I mean, Craig is the most level-headed of all of my HODs. Like, I like to generally hire people that are more insane than me, because then I look very responsible. But yeah, Craig is the nicest, most chill person, but he also, like me, he really cares about the history. And when I interviewed him for The Witch, he was the first person who came in with actual references of actual things that were actually took place in the film, in the period in which the film was set, and wasn't just referencing other films. Mm-hmm. And that passion for history runs super deep, and obviously he's so detail oriented, and the finishes are insane.
Oh yeah,
they're insane. I mean, like there's over 60 builds. Virtually every interior was a build. The Transylvanian village was a build. Obviously, the city of Visburg was a backlot set, but the monastery was a build, and the castle interiors. I mean, the castle interiors in the monastery, even when they aren't lit, mm-hmm. they look real. That's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. Yeah. And then Linda Muir, the costume designer, amazing work again.
Yeah, also has the same passion for history, and also Linda likes to challenge me a lot and push me out of my comfort zone, which I love. I think, it's important to have, good overlap in your Venn diagrams of interest with all of your HODs, but it's also those areas that don't overlap that are really exciting, because they push you beyond what you could imagine, and Linda's incredibly good at that. But I mean, the costumes are awesome.
Oh, it's incredible. And what I've noticed on this film, which I found when I was doing Potter all those years ago, is the attention to detail. In terms of, I remember we had 400 menus for the kids in the Great Hall, and I knew we'd never see those menus on camera, that they were all hand printed with the menu. That's sort of what happened in this film with the set decorating. There were things that the actors could respond to, even though the camera may never see them. Yeah,
I mean, I think for creating an atmosphere is an accumulation of details, and the more details you have, the more the world is complete, and the more that you as an audience hopefully can invest in the world, and therefore potentially believe in metaphysical things like vampires. But part of that is not just what you see, but it's what the actors are engaged with. And like, Aaron wore a corset because a guy of his kind of fashion sense in that period would wear a little male corset. You never see it, but it changes how he moves. Emma Corrin talks about opening the drawer of her character's desk and seeing like all these letters that she and her husband wrote back and forth to each other for years, right. We're never going to see that, but it helps them feel, connected to the world, and that changes their performance and the whole thing.
Louise Ford, the editor, I imagine, and obviously every shot, there's so much that goes into the planning of the making of this film. When Louise gets the footage, how much freedom does she have? I mean, because you design shots so specifically and you design edits so specifically.
Yeah, I mean, Lou has a really tough job because it is designed in a certain way, and oftentimes the edits are designed to go in a certain order. Obviously, there are plenty of scenes with shot reverse shot where you can see Lou's care and Lou's sensitivity to story and character. But where Lou really shines is where you'll never know that she did it, because it's when Jared and I paint ourselves into these corners with the oneers and something doesn't work. And then all of a sudden we have to hack one side, and she has to make the edit look as pre-planned as all the other edits that were super pre-planned. And it can be quite a conundrum
Right. I want to talk about the actors a little bit because I think the fact that this project has been around for 10 years, some of the actors that you initially chose for some of the roles have changed, particularly Bill. And the thing that I'm most impressed about in the fact that you've done 4 films is you're starting to develop this sort of body of actors. It's almost, you're kind of like John Ford in that way. John Ford had Ward Bond and John Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, and he took them to every movie. Do you think that's going to, I mean, you've done that with Defoe already. Do you think that will continue to happen with some of these actors?
Yeah, I mean, the same way I like working with the same HODs, I like working with the same actors because, you know, you already have that trust. And also, apparently I have an unconventional way of working. And so they already know the conventions, you know, and so that makes it much easier. And you like when you continue these collaborations, you become further extensions of each other. And so you can push yourselves beyond what you're capable of.
Right. Which is amazing. And so initially, though, Bill was
going to, when I was 8 or 9 years ago or whatever, Bill was going to be Hutter. He was going to be Nicholas Holt's part. And yeah, so things change. But yeah, when I saw It Chapter 2, he plays, there's a scene where he plays Pennywise as a middle-aged man and not as the clown. And I thought, wow, that is dark and heavy. And I believe him. I think he could do Orlok. And so then we had a discussion and I shared a lot of research with him and we started he started sending recordings of his voice and we did a little screen test and it was undeniable. It was undeniable. But yeah, you know, he did a tremendous amount of work for the role. Obviously he lowered his voice an octave. He worked with an opera singer to train his voice. That is his voice. That is not digitally manipulated. We turned it up because he has a similar speaking voice to mine. So when he was that low, it was not that loud, but that is his voice. And, you know, and it was a difficult thing because the part is so unlike him. You know, the idea, the look is based on a folk vampire. When folk vampires were just corpses, you know, they're like the old folk vampires were more similar to a cinematic zombie. So then I asked myself, okay, well, what does a dead Transylvanian nobleman look like? That's what he looks like. That's what he's wearing. And when Bill first saw the sculpt of the bust, he said, dude, like this guy didn't look anything like me when he was alive. and I said, yeah, but that's the idea. But I remember, you know, he was intimidated but I remember the third screen test when he had the full prosthetics and the full costume and the moment when Bill completely disappeared and this darkness that he was able to conjure. It sounds very precious, but it felt like that darkness took over.
But what about, I was going to ask you this later, his voice. How did you guys get to that accent? How did you come up with that particular voice, which I've never heard before?
I mean, it was, that was just what I was hearing in my head as I wrote it. Like if you've read the script and the description of the voice and the description of the breathing is in the script. So Bill would send me these recordings and I would say a little, that's great, but maybe a little less of that, but a little more of this, and that was sort of it. I mean, he was also there was like I sent him some Soviet movies from the 70s with some like really scary Balkan villains with big mustaches and deep voices who probably smoked like 1,000 cigarettes a day, and he had to just get there, you know, with practice.
I mean, it's terrifying. Literally the first 3 weeks of shooting, I couldn't approach him on set. I was terrified of him. And it was only the day when we were in the castle and someone was talking with me and we said, where did all this food come from? And Bill started to pretend he was Orlok in the kitchen making all the food. And when he did that, I suddenly thought, okay, Orlok has a sense of humor, at least off camera. And I felt I could actually speak to him on set. So many of as we talked about when we first came out here, sort of see you and I as sort of the odd couple of film. We've made the joke from the director of Home Alone and The Witch, but the reality is Rob and I share this love of film, And I think more directors need to sort of dig deep into film history. And I think for us, it was simple. It was Hammer horror films that we started talking about, which is a little bit of that in here.
Absolutely.
I think you were influenced a little by Freddie Francis and
big time, very, very, very influenced by Freddie Francis's staging and Hammer horror movies in general. I mean, like a joke elevator pitch is like, a scary Hammer horror movie made by Merchant Ivory,
right, which is kind of appropriate.
Sure.
Yeah. So in terms of, for me, being on this film, I've talked about it a little bit, that I think every director should have, well, not only an opportunity to produce a film for you, but also the opportunity to work with you and observe either a director like yourself or someone who is not even close to them in a particular style. And one of the great things about being on this set, and Rob was very adamant about the fact that if I'm producing this film, I can't just be the kind of guy who shows up, move to Prague, be on the set every day. And it was enlightening for me. It really was inspiring. So I took what I learned from Nosferatu and brought it to my next film. And there's a sense of being, trying to stay youthful, even though you continue to get older. But we had a situation where Rob would use a crane on every single stage.
There's no Steadicam. It's always crane and dolly, always.
And I tried to beg Jaron and Rob, just look at a Steadicam test. They're really, Scorsese, Jim Cameron, they're pretty good. They use them. But no, they wouldn't. They kept pushing me aside like, oh yeah, we'll get to it. They never got to it. But one day he brought a crane onto a set that was the size of a bathroom stall. And I said, what's going on here? Why are you bringing a crane into this set? And I watched it, and 8 hours later, the shot worked out. 6 months later, on a set of a movie I was directing, I brought a crane into a bathroom stall. So that's what I learned from this man. I mean, it was a rewarding experience, I have to say.
And equally as rewarding for me, maybe more so. I mean, Chris has been a mentor to me since we met in the Witch post-production. And on this film, I was so lucky to have one of the masters of orthodox Hollywood storytelling by my side all the time. I mean, I talk about the storyboards that Jaron and I develop, and Chris was going through them like with such detail, and then would say, "Where's this beat? Where's this beat that's in the script?" Like, he says the line, but we need to see it visually, And Chris was a great antidote to me and Jaron's arty fartiness that is instinctual to us, and it was just, and of course, I think it really helps, as Chris was saying, that we are such different filmmakers, because it's, he never is gonna, he knows that he's gonna help make the best Robert Eggers movie that he can, because this is never obviously going to be a Chris Columbus movie. But I would say that when we were the shot that kind of pushes into the castle, like, we had something else storyboarded, and Chris was like, "What are you guys doing? You guys are using Hunedoara Castle, this amazing Transylvanian castle that you told me was Bram Stoker's inspiration for Castle Dracula, and we're barely seeing it." And I was kind of like, what the fuck? And so then I put on the first Harry Potter movie. I'm like, let's see how you establish a castle. And I was like, that's actually pretty good. And so while it is different, it was inspired by Harry Potter.
I didn't know you put that movie on, but thanks for that. One of the things that is amazing to me, I had the opportunity to, obviously I saw the film a lot during post-production, but I had the opportunity of seeing the film, the first cut without sound, without final sound and music. And what I learned the first cut was very good, but then when I saw the film with your completed sound mix and the score, it was just another character. It elevated the film to another level. Most people think of you as a visual director, but there's so much work into the sound design of this movie, and particularly with the score. Can you talk about how important that is to you? Because I know it's extremely.
No, I mean, it's massively important. And a lot of times people occasionally I talk to journalists who bring up the modernity of my filmmaking, and I'm like, well, actually all my staging was done the same way in the 40s, but it's the sound.
Right.
It's the sound that is really making it like a more of a beast. And I really had the luxury to like do a ton of spotting sessions with the sound designer and my composer, so that you could kind of say like, this is your turn, this is your turn, this is your turn. And like, okay, so Robin, the music's going to come in really strong when the ship comes in, but then as it starts to enter frame more and we see the hull, then we want to hear the creaking, and it's all about the creaking, and the music comes out, and then as it sails away, then the music needs to come, and so we were always approaching it with that kind of detail.
But was it intense on the mixing stage in terms of
it was more heated on the mixing stage than in any other part of production, actually. Right. But I'm really happy with the mix. Yeah,
the mix is phenomenal. Also, let's talk a little bit about the fact that you approach filmmaking with such an intense amount of research, which not a lot of filmmakers do. Even filmmakers who are doing movies about World War I don't have that sort of dedication. I think part of you loves it. Yep. I mean, you walk into his office and I'm not kidding, it's a library of maybe about 450 books in terms of what's happening with this particular film. How deeply do you research, and does it carry over to the other departments as well?
I mean, as deep as I can, I mean, again, like historical accuracy doesn't make a film better by any means. Poor Things is awesome. It's not historically accurate, but it's awesome. But for me, like I like the again, talking about that accumulation of details. When you have all the research right there, then you just have to do it. Like you don't have to invent things, so you can create like a lot more detail, a lot more efficiently. And also, the idea of historical accuracy is, of course, impossible. We will never know, and even if you could know, it's still going to be an interpretation because it's a movie. But all my heads of department know, okay, this is the goal: historical accuracy. So it kind of like everyone's on the same page. We know what we're after, and sometimes it's also like an incredible hunt. What was the embroidery on the folk clothing in the Hunedoara region of Transylvania in 1838? That's a lot harder than you might expect to discover what it is, but it's also lovely because I also get to work with like really super insane specialists. We on this film, I worked with Florin Lazarescu, who's a Romanian poet, playwright, screenwriter, and folklore expert, and he like recreated the ancient, it's a dead language, the ancient language of Dacian that the ancestors of the ethnic Romanians spoke, and that's what Orlok does, his magical incantations, and among a plethora of other things that Florin helped out with, which was delightful.
Doesn't it though bring it's like you're taking the audience by the hand and bringing them into the film in that respect, because
that's the hope.
Yeah, and it works. I mean, that sort of dedication to research, I think, works beautifully. I think I was going to ask you a question about, and I don't know if we can answer it until the film's released, but Nosferatu is kind of a rarity in the marketplace today. I mean, it's a big budget film based on a 100-year-old IP, which is not necessarily the first thing a studio executive is going to greenlight. I think more of these movies need to get made. I think more original films need to get made. Is that your intention is to continue to do this sort of work? And hopefully, if the box office is good enough, you'll continue to be able to make these kind of films. And I guess the question really is...
I hope so.
And so do you ever see yourself doing anything like in terms of your intense research, something like a science fiction film, something in the future that you can't research?
I would still find a way to research it. I like making a contemporary film just is horrible to me because like photographing a car is pretty unappealing for me, but photographing a cell phone is like death, And you'd have to do it. You'd have to do it.
You cannot see my next film though.
I can
5 cell phones.
I can watch it. I just don't want to shoot it.
Now I know every time you see the cell phone shot, you're gonna be what a hack.
But you have to do it to tell a modern story. But that's part of the reason why I wouldn't want to. We should talk about Lily, I think.
Oh, sure. Yes. Lily's performance. But I mean, all the performances in the film are pretty amazing. But I mean, Lily is just pretty incredible. And how, do you want to talk about how you got the performance, or you guys rehearsed a lot?
I mean, Lily, I met Lily. She got it immediately. Like, and I said, look, I want to cast you in this role, but you still have to audition for it. I sent her a lot of materials. We did a lot of talking, and then she nailed it. Like, I was in tears. The casting director was in tears. The videographer, who doesn't care, was in tears. It was so raw. And then, she practiced her, she asked for a dialect coach months and months and months ahead of time, so that by the time she got to Prague, it would just be a non-issue. And then we worked with Marie Gabrielle Rodi, who is a choreographer who specializes in this Japanese dance called Buto, that is about letting yourself go and letting something else come in. And she worked with Lily tons on all that body work. And again, like Bill's voice, that is unaided by CG. There's no wire work. That is all, Lily Rose Depp's hard work. And, and the power of her character, like, physically struggling between what's going on in her and this vampire through that. I mean, it is very powerful, and it was really intense. And I tend to do a lot of takes, but I knew, like, the scene near the end with the tongue, like, I had like 4 takes. You can only do that so much because it's so intense.
But I mean, part of that, you brought up Lily. You were strong and you were tough, and it was no, I'm telling you, there were a couple of times you went 20, 21 takes with certain performances, and you needed to get there. And she was always willing to sort of give you what you needed. But it was not easy in terms of the time, right?
Yeah. I mean, but not necessarily with Lily, with any of these things, because it's like, well, that was really great, but the cat wasn't in the right spot. So, like,
right. I think the last thing I want to say, and I think we got to wrap it up. There's so much more I want to talk about, but I think people's perception, at least the perception out there, is that, oh, this is another horror film. But I think it's so much more than that. And I think people have to remember, at least for me as a producer, I can say it because I honestly feel that, oh yeah, it's a horror film. It's scary. But at its heart, it's a gothic love story. And it's complex. And I think it shares a lot with Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast. And I really think people need to think about that when they see this film, that it not only feels like this glorious dark fairy tale, fucked up fairy tale, but it is this wonderful, it's not just a horror film. And I think that's important for people to take away.
I think Chris sang it better than me, but arty farty again. Like, Japanese no theater is like a very ancient, it's an ancient tradition. It has some of the best horror stories, but like, there's no jump scares. There are jump scares in this, but it's about exploring like the dark side of humanity, which is important, and it is drama,
right?
It's looking in the mirror and seeing the things that you don't want to see.
Exactly. And one of the things that I learned on this movie as well is I've directed a lot of actors and a lot of great actors. And through the first 4 weeks on this movie, Rob keeps saying to the actors, eyebrows. He's pointing to their eyebrows. And I'm like, finally, I said, what the f*** are you talking about? What do you mean eyebrows? Can you explain how that transcends into this film?
I don't like actors to move their eyebrows because... especially for period stuff, but you just waste a lot of energy and the actor doesn't seem as focused and doesn't seem as committed. But also, like when the performances are more stoic and contained, then when they go crazy, like it really, you see the difference,
right?
You see
which is obvious, yeah. It's something I learned. Anyway, thank you guys.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.